Our Switch heads, welcome back. Kanan here once again, and thank you for joining me for my review of Gravitar Recharged. A old school gravity puzzle shooter. Not sure how else to describe this, but we'll see, shall we? But before we get to that, why not subscribe to the channel in order to get your weekly reviews and sales fix? And don't forget to hit that like button because, well, it's just a nice thing to do and it really does help. Let us blast off and see what is out there. Engage. First up, story. As a lone pilot far from home, it's your duty to find a way back home. Kind of because you need to and you want to. Well, it's a simple story, but do you really need anything else if the actual gameplay is strong and solid? No. Let's find out whether it is. Yes. And whilst we're on the subject of gameplay, why don't we take a look at them controls, shall we? And they're kind of like within that spectrum of dead easy, in theory, but has that hard to master part to them. And so these controls I hated to start with, and yeah, they were a right pain in the arse for me to get into. And I don't know why, because I've played games like this before, but I don't know, maybe because it's been so long. But yep, left thumbstick, rotate yourself around, and then the right trigger button to thrust yourself, fanar. And then you get like this power up, picky up thing, which kind of like pulls power-ups towards you. That is actually quite neat. And then you get to fire 3 shots at takes a time. Boink. And yeah, this makes it slightly more strategic, I have to admit. And this all leads to some really intense gameplay, knowing how easy it is to frack up at any time and then having to start the missions again. And I guess whilst I'm on the actual subject of missions, you get 2 modes that you can play in Gravitar. An arcade mode that's not really that serious and a great place to learn the controls and even kind of relax with no pressures. I played this a little bit and yeah, it was okay, but I think the progression side of me kind of wanted to go for the missions more. And speaking of missions, the mission mode, which is a more structured mode giving you objectives, and this is essentially the story mode and I guess how you get back home. So this is the actual missions here. You can pick which missions you actually want. And these are kind of like the same in arcade, but done slightly differently. I'll show you that in a second. But I like the structure of this, fact that I can just go from mission to mission in this format, if you like, and just go in. Got the mission at the top and just get on with what I want to be or what I need to be doing. Whereas the arcade mode, you get options like a single life, no power-ups, and no shield. Both can be played in multiplayer, and then when you actually click into it, you have to fly. See, there's asteroids around here, and you can destroy said asteroids. Yep. And then you have to actually fly to the planet that you want to go to. Now, these lead out, and yeah, it's the same sort of thing, essentially. Only one's a little bit more structured, and the other you have to kind of like work at a bit more. I preferred the missions, personally, doing it that way. But that's just me. You might be different. And although I couldn't play at time of recording the multiplayer, there is the opportunity to play all these modes in multiplayer, where essentially you are tethered together by, I guess, a beam, and basically this alters the whole dynamics, I suppose, of the actual game. I did watch a video just so that I knew exactly what was going on here in this mode, and yeah, it was actually looking pretty darn good. And it's an actual mode that I do want to try myself, and I probably will in the near future. So, as I said, the missions come in different types. Activate beacons, destroy all enemies, destroy the reactor, and then get yourself blooming well out of there before it blows you up as well. And also stealing intelligence, and that's just to name a few. And then once in the actual missions, thankfully they all come in different shapes and sizes, and some even have gravity and different types of gravity that will pull you towards structures, making it harder to control your ship at times, even though it's really difficult to do that anyway. Some of the planets are open and just involve navigating around structures, and others involve you to pilot into cave-like areas, and some have you going into tight areas like tunnels, and all of this while avoiding or being shot at by enemies and traps, and obviously trying to actually get the objectives done that you've been given for that mission. And some of these come in the shape of turrets, some with shields, spaceships, little alien ones, they're pretty cool, and they also, some of them have shields as well, missile launchers, and even mines that, well, devastatingly blow up when hit or got close to. Okay, so as explained before, you get a 3-shot shooting system, easy for you to say, with which means timing is key for destroying most enemies. Of course, them developers aren't monsters, and luckily there are some power-ups you can collect. And power-ups like 3 shots at the same time with shorter range, and it kind of like reminds me of a shotgun. Your pretty darn standard health packs, invulnerability, this is useful for some of the levels, I mean extremely useful, and more. These all work well enough, and I do like the way you collect them with that beamy thing that shucks them to you. After completion of each mission, you get a mission briefing, which is handy. There's even leaderboards if you wish to chase a score, but I'm not quite sure whether it was because the game wasn't released at time, but I found it difficult to actually get it to load up the actual scores, so I kind of like just stayed away from that part altogether. I also felt, because how hard the controls felt, there was no waiting around in these missions. Get in, get out, with no time for smelling them flowers, as one mistake and you're starting the mission again. And this kind of led to some frustrations from time to time. I also felt the missions could have had a little bit more variety to them, as it did start to get a bit samey, that vibe as you progress through the missions. For me, the game was hard, but not so it was impossible to do. Although I did appreciate the fact that you was not stuck just doing the one mission at a time, and this really helped me progress by simply leaving the problematic missions until later, or in my case just not go back to them. Visually, however, it was all very retro with a modern detail here and there. Some nice touches like the shields and some of the explosions. It's certainly a nice update to the actual original, and obviously this is seen throughout the game. Audio wise, it's okay, retro in feel, some nice music in the background, obviously miles ahead of the original again. The good. It's a nice update to the original. Multiplayer, really cool feature, and it can feel very tactical at times. The bad. It does get a little samey as you get into it. For me, the controls took a wee bit long to actually get used to. Some level spikes felt really harsh at times. And so, this is one of them games I instantly recognised, and instantly, not so hated, but kind of groaned at it when I started playing. But after playing it for a while and getting to grips with the actual controls, it started to grow on me. I don't think it will appeal to every single person, but I do think that there's a solid, if not a little repetitive game here. And that's well deserving of a 3+ out of 5. And one I can see myself going back to a few more times yet, and definitely trying out that multiplayer. And as for an alternative for Gravitar, well, why not subscribe for more weekly reviews and sales, and don't forget to like the video, as it really does help. Oh yes, and that alternative, I'm going to go for Asteroids Recharged, because, well, why not? Another by Atari, and I'm pretty sure if you're into Gravitar Recharged, you'll be into Asteroids Recharged. Although after playing this one, it does look pretty good. Do you have a better or just an alternative of your own? Then along with your thoughts on Gravitar, leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And even come join me and the Switchheads community in our community Discord to further the conversation. Because life is better when we switch together.